Lonely billionaire sits alone at Christmas dinner until a brave little girl points her finger at him and changes everything. The snow had been falling since 4 in the afternoon. By the time the clock on Fifth Avenue struck 7, Manhattan was buried under a soft, silent blanket of white. The yellow taxis moved slower than usual. The street vendors had packed up early. Even the pigeons, those stubborn New York survivors, had disappeared somewhere warm. But inside Harlow's Fine Dining, one of the most exclusive restaurants on the Upper East Side, the world was glowing. Crystal chandeliers threw golden light across white tablecloths. The smell of roasted rosemary and warm bread drifted through every corner of the room. A pianist in the far corner played "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," with the kind of gentle touch that made people lean closer to each other without realizing it. Pine garlands wrapped in fairy lights lined the windows, and on every table sat a small candle, a sprig of holly, and a tiny card that read, "Merry Christmas from the Harlow's family." Every table in that restaurant was alive. Couples whispered to each other over candlelight. Families passed bread baskets and argued lovingly over who got the last dinner roll. Children in their Christmas outfits sat up straight for approximately 4 minutes before sliding under the tables. Grandparents dabbed their eyes watching grandchildren tear into chocolate desserts. It was the kind of scene that belonged on a holiday greeting card. Every table, except one, at the table closest to the window, the best seat in the house, with a perfect view of the snow-dusted street below, Nathan Cole sat completely, utterly painfully alone. He was 34 years old. Dark hair, strong jaw, the kind of face that made people assume he had everything figured out. He wore a charcoal blazer over a dark sweater, understated. Expensive, perfectly fitted. His watch alone probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. On paper, Nathan Cole was one of the most successful men in America. At 22, working out of a 400-square-foot apartment in Brooklyn, with 2 laptops and a folding table, he had built Cole Enterprises from nothing. By 28, the company was worth $400 million. By 32, it had crossed the billion-dollar mark. His face had been on the cover of Forbes' Fast Company and Time. He had been called a visionary, a disruptor, a genius. He had also been called cold, distant, impossible to reach. Tonight, sitting alone at the finest restaurant in Manhattan on Christmas Eve, Nathan Cole looked like a man who had everything the world promised would make him happy, and had discovered, too late, that the world had lied. He stared at the water glass in front of him, full, untouched. The ice had already started to melt. The candle on his table flickered whenever someone walked past. He hadn't opened the menu. The waiter, a young man named Dominic, who had worked at Harlow's for 3 years and prided himself on reading people, had come by 4 times. Each time, Nathan had given him the same quiet answer. "Just a few more minutes. Thank you." It had been 53 minutes. What nobody in that restaurant knew, what nobody in Nathan's office or his building, or his entire, carefully constructed life knew, was why he came back to this table every single year. Exactly 12 months ago on Christmas Eve, Nathan had sat at this very table with the only person in the world he had ever truly let in, his mother, Carol Cole. She had been 61 years old, sharp-witted, warm-hearted, endlessly patient with a son who worked too much and called too rarely, and always promised he would do better starting next week. She had raised him alone after his father left when Nathan was 7. She had worked double shifts as a hospital administrator so he could go to college. She had shown up to every single one of his milestones, with a smile so proud it embarrassed him. And every Christmas Eve, without fail, no matter how busy he got, no matter how many deals were closing or flights he had to catch, she had insisted on this dinner. This restaurant, this table by the window, because the snow looks like it's performing just for us, she always said. Last year she had not been feeling well. Nathan had noticed the slight breathlessness, the way she paused mid-sentence sometimes, but she had waved away his concern, the way she always did. "I'm fine, baby. Stop fussing. Tell me about your life." They had talked for 2 hours. She had laughed until she cried at a story he told about a board meeting gone wrong. She had held his hand across the table and told him, quietly and seriously, that she was proud of him. Not because of the company or the money or the magazine covers. Because you still came, she said. Every year, no matter what. You always came. 2 hours later, between the main course and dessert, Carol Cole had a sudden cardiac event. The paramedics arrived in 4 minutes. It wasn't fast enough. Nathan had held her hand the entire time. Right there on the floor of Harlow's fine dining, with Christmas music still playing softly overhead, and snow still falling outside the window. She was gone before midnight. And so here he was, back at the same table, same window, same snow. Some people who knew him, the few who knew him well enough, had suggested therapy, travel, anything to break the cycle of returning to the place where it happened. But Nathan couldn't explain it, even to himself. Coming back felt like keeping a promise. Like as long as he sat at this table on Christmas Eve, some part of her was still here. In the candlelight, in the sound of the piano, in the snow drifting down outside the glass. He reached into his jacket pocket and touched the small, worn photograph he always carried. Her face, her smile, that particular smile she had, like she knew something beautiful was about to happen. He put the photo back. He stared at his water glass. The ice had nearly melted completely. At 7:48 p.m., the front door of Harlow's opened, and a cold December wind swept through the entrance hall. In walked Sarah Merritt. She was 32, brown hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders, a forest green sweater, a scarf she'd had for so long the ends were slightly frayed. She wasn't dressed like someone who regularly dined at Harlow's fine dining. She was dressed like someone who had carefully, thoughtfully, put together the nicest outfit she owned for one special night. She had made this reservation 2 months ago, had saved up for 6 weeks, had told herself, on at least a dozen difficult nights since September, that this dinner was the light at the end of the tunnel, because Sarah Merritt had not had an easy year. 8 months ago, her husband of 6 years had packed 2 suitcases and left. No dramatic fight, no single breaking point. Just a quiet, devastating conversation at the kitchen table one Tuesday morning. And then he was gone. The divorce had been finalized in October. The girls had asked questions Sarah didn't always know how to answer. She had held herself together through pure stubbornness and the specific, unbreakable love of a mother who refuses to fall apart in front of her children. But some nights after the girls were asleep, she sat in the kitchen and cried until she had nothing left. Tonight, though, tonight was for magic. She had promised. Behind her, holding hands and completely losing their minds over the Christmas decorations, were Lily and Lena, her 5-year-old twin daughters. Lily wore a bright yellow puffy jacket and a navy striped shirt underneath. Her curly hair bounced with every step. She had been talking non-stop since they left the apartment and showed absolutely no signs of stopping. She was the kind of child who walked into every room, like she had been personally invited and had several important things to say. Lena wore an orange jacket and had her mother's quieter eyes. She held Lily's hand and looked around at everything with wide, serious, wondering attention, and the kind of child who absorbed the whole world before speaking a word about it. Together, they were the most alive thing in the room. The hostess led them through the restaurant toward their table, a lovely two-top near the window, just a few feet away from Nathan's. They were almost there when Lily stopped walking. Just stopped, completely. In the middle of the restaurant, she let go of Lena's hand. She tilted her head to one side, her little brow furrowed in the way it always did when she encountered something she needed to understand. She was staring at Nathan. Sarah noticed immediately. "Lily, come on, sweetheart." But Lily raised one small hand and pointed, directly, unambiguously, with complete 5-year-old confidence, at the man sitting alone at the window table. "Mommy," she said in the loud, carrying voice that children use when they haven't yet learned that some thoughts are supposed to stay inside. "Why is that man sitting all by himself? Doesn't he have anybody?" Half the restaurant heard it. Sarah felt the specific, scorching heat of public parental embarrassment rise from her chest to her face in approximately 1 second. "Lily, we don't point, remember, come on." But Lily was already walking toward Nathan's table. 2 steps. 3. She stopped right in front of him, looked up at him with those enormous, completely unguarded eyes and asked, Are you sad? The restaurant went quiet in that corner. Nathan looked up from his water glass. He blinked. He hadn't been looked at like that in, he couldn't remember how long. No agenda, no pitch, no carefully constructed first impression. Just a small girl with curly hair asking him the most honest question anyone had asked him in years. He opened his mouth. The polite, deflecting answer was right there. I'm fine. Thank you, enjoy your dinner. But it didn't come out, because he looked at her face and something in him just gave. A little bit, he said quietly. Yeah, a little bit. Lily nodded with the gravity of someone receiving important information. She processed this for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned around to her mother, who had now arrived at Nathan's table looking mortified. Mommy, he said, can you eat with us? Nobody should be alone on Christmas. That's a rule. Lily, Sarah started. That is a rule, Mommy. We talked about it. We talked about it in the context of, it's a rule. Sarah turned to Nathan. Her face was still red. I'm so incredibly sorry. She means well. She just has absolutely no. Don't apologize, Nathan said. Something in his voice made Sarah stop. He was looking at Lily with an expression she couldn't quite name. Like someone recognizing something they thought they'd lost. She's right, he said simply. He looked up at Sarah. If the offer is real, I'd genuinely like that, if it's not too much. Sarah studied him for a moment. She was a pediatric nurse. She had spent years learning to read people quickly and accurately. And what she saw in this man's face was not what she expected. Not arrogance. Not a wealthy man looking for entertainment. She saw grief, clear and quiet and completely unperformed. She exhaled softly. Okay, she said. Merry Christmas, then. Merry Christmas, he said. And it sounded like he meant it in a way he hadn't meant anything in a long time. They pushed the tables together. Dominic, the waiter, who had seen many things in 3 years at Harlow's, had never seen anything quite like this. He rearranged the settings without a word, and mentally decided this was going to be the best table of the night. He was right. Within 15 minutes, Lena had settled into the chair beside Nathan and was showing him, very carefully, a crayon drawing she had made of a Christmas tree. Each ornament had a name written next to it in kindergarten handwriting. She explained each one with quiet, precise detail. Nathan listened to every word, like it was the most important briefing he'd ever attended. Lily had taken it upon herself to explain the full rules of a Christmas game she was inventing in real time, complete with revisions and amendments. The rules changed approximately every 90 seconds. Nathan played along without missing a beat, which earned him Lily's highest possible approval. He's good at this, Lily informed her mother seriously. I see that, Sarah said. Later, when the girls were occupied with their hot chocolates and a shared dessert that was technically one portion but had somehow spread across the entire table, Nathan and Sarah talked. Really talked. The way people talk when the walls come down and it's late, and there's snow outside and nothing to prove. He told her about his mother, about this table, about the year that had passed in a fog of work and silence and coming back every December to sit alone, because he didn't know how else to hold on. Sarah listened without trying to fix it. She just listened. Then she told him about the Tuesday morning at the kitchen table, about 8 months of holding herself together, about saving up for this dinner, because she had promised her girls' magic and she was going to deliver it, if it was the last thing she did. You did, Nathan said quietly. Deliver it. She looked at him. So did you. You just didn't know you were part of it. They stayed for 3.5 hours. When it was finally, undeniably time to go. Coats on, scarves wrapped. Lena half asleep. Against her mother's shoulder, Lily took Nathan's hand in both of hers and looked up at him with complete 5-year-old certainty. Same time next year, she said. We'll save your seat. Nathan crouched down to her level. His eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with the candlelight. I'll be here, he said. I promise. Standing on the sidewalk outside Harlow's, snowflakes landing in her hair, Sarah turned back once to look through the window. Nathan was still standing at the table, looking out at the snow, but he didn't look empty anymore. He looked like a man who had just remembered something essential, something that no amount of money or success or achievement had ever been able to give him, and that a 5-year-old girl in a yellow jacket had handed to him completely for free. The feeling of being wanted at the table. The feeling of belonging somewhere, even for one night. The feeling, simple and irreplaceable, of not being alone. Outside, Lily tugged her mother's sleeve as they walked through the snow toward the subway. "Mommy." "Yeah, baby?" "I think we fixed him a little bit." Sarah looked down at her daughter, then up at the snow falling soft and steady through the Manhattan sky. Then she smiled, the real kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, and pulled both her girls close. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think we did. Some people spend a lifetime building walls tall enough to keep the pain out, not realizing they've also kept the light out. And sometimes, all it takes to bring those walls down is one brave little girl who hasn't learned yet that you're not supposed to walk up to strangers and ask them if they're okay. Maybe that's the lesson we all forgot somewhere along the way. Share this story if you believe no one should sit alone on Christmas Eve, because kindness doesn't cost a thing, but to the person receiving it, it can be worth everything.